My diagnosis of selective mutism came when I was 3 years old, a clinical label for the silence that had already become my world. That was also the year my father, a medical examiner of some renown, decided he wanted a divorce. His logic was as clean and sterile as the instruments on his autopsy table. He argued that his profession was built on the pillars of teamwork and precise communication, and he had no use for a child who was, in his eyes, fundamentally incapable of becoming a collaborator. He saw a defect, a flaw in the product he had helped create. In the courtroom, my mother clung to the judge's robes, her sobs echoing in the staid chamber, but her desperation was no match for the finality of the gavel's strike. The divorce was granted. After the proceedings, my mother collected the substantial settlement my father provided, wiped the last of her tears, and left me on the curb of a busy street. She drove away without a backward glance, disappearing with her newfound wealth. A kind volunteer eventually found me and took me to a local orphanage. By then, I was 5. Although the words wouldn't come out, my mind was sharp enough to piece together the truth. I had been discarded by both of my parents. Strangely, the orphanage felt more like a sanctuary than the home I had lost. At home, the atmosphere was a constant, oppressive weight, characterized either by my father's chillingly indifferent presence or my mother's endless weeping hysterics. In her desperate attempts to shock me into speaking, she would sometimes strike me across the face in secret, her frustration turning into sharp, stinging slaps. Her violence only drove me deeper into my silent fortress. The more she tried to force words out of me, the more resolute my silence became. When I was 8, a middle-aged woman with exhaustion etched into the lines of her face came to adopt me. She offered me a smile, but it was a brittle, stiff thing that didn't quite reach her tired eyes. Standing near her felt like being in the path of a persistent cold draft. Yet when she took my hand, I was surprised by the size and warmth of hers. It was that warmth that convinced me to leave the orphanage with her. My adoptive mother, Maria, was perpetually busy, her days consumed by a demanding job that left her drained. She would often lock me in my room for my own safety while she was away, returning home long after dark, looking utterly spent. Despite her fatigue, she never failed to provide 3 meals a day. In the evenings, she would hold me in her arms, her weary voice reading stories until I fell asleep. Still, an unshakable coldness clung to her, a scent I couldn't place that seemed to permeate her clothes and skin. Once I had learned to read on my own, piecing together the words she had taught me, a strange suspicion began to form in my mind. I started to wonder if my adoptive mother wasn't truly alive. My childish fantasy was grounded in a startling reality I would soon discover. She worked at a crematorium. Her official title was mortuary technician, but in simpler terms, she was a professional corpse carrier. Because I couldn't speak, I lacked the ability to communicate in a conventional way. The specialized schools that could have helped were far too expensive, so Maria took it upon herself to teach me what she could after her long shifts. Slowly, painstakingly, I began to recognize characters and form words on paper, though I remained unable to interact with children my own age. Fearing I would become withdrawn and depressed from spending all my time locked away, Maria began taking me with her to work. Her job was a grueling and somber affair. It involved the tedious transport of human remains in every imaginable state, whole and fragmented, fresh and long past it. She often had to work the night shift, a solitary vigil over the silent facility. My mutism, it turned out, came with an unexpected side effect, a complete lack of fear around the dead. Perhaps it was also a product of being exposed to my mother's work from a young age. To me, the bodies were simply Maria's clients, and I understood that they needed to be treated with respect and care. All the employees of the crematorium came to know me, the silent little girl who trailed after Maria. During their work, they would patiently teach me small things, showing me the tools of their trade and the processes they followed. At first, I was merely an observer, standing quietly in the corner. But over time, I began to assist, and later, I was the one taking the lead, my small, nimble fingers carefully stitching bodies back together. It seemed I had a natural talent for it, a strange and innate understanding of the human form, even in its most broken state. Before long, I could determine the nature of a wound with a single glance, discerning the weapon and the force behind it. My unusual skill set did not go unnoticed. I was eventually recommended to the local police department, where they had a need for someone who could handle the more bizarre and varied human fragments that came their way. I still couldn't speak, but the detailed and precise autopsy reports I wrote spoke for me, bringing a final, quiet peace to countless restless souls. That peace, however, was about to be shattered. The day before my permanent position as a medical examiner's assistant was to be finalized, my spot was unexpectedly given to someone else. A new assistant named Serafina Thorne materialized at the department as if from thin air. She was the complete opposite of me, bubbly, vivacious, and relentlessly outgoing. On her very first day, she not only charmed every one of our colleagues, but also managed to drag the entire team out for drinks after work. "Come on, guys," she had shouted with infectious energy. "Stop being wimps. We're not leaving till we're wasted." The new captain, Captain Davies, was utterly captivated by her. "Serafina has worked on several major cases downtown," he announced to the team. "She's just here in the trenches to get some experience. From now on, she will be our team's medical examiner." After the captain's pronouncement, an awkward silence filled the room instead of the expected cheers. One team member looked troubled. "Captain," he began hesitantly, "we already have a medical examiner." The captain shot a dismissive glance in my direction. "She's just a temp. We can let her go." The previous medical examiner at our precinct had retired months ago, and I had been capably performing all the duties of the role ever since. Despite my disability, everyone on the team had witnessed my capabilities, and my promotion to a permanent position had been unanimously approved. My official title was still intern, but I was on the cusp of becoming a full-fledged M.E.S assistant. Now, Serafina had not only swooped in to take my job, but was also attempting to have me removed entirely. The team members who had supported my promotion began to speak up. "Alara has been with our team for years," one of them argued. "She knows the ME procedures inside and out. Suddenly replacing her might not be a good idea." Captain Davies was visibly annoyed. What's not a good idea about it? Serafina's father is Dr. Alistair Finch, a renowned medical examiner sought after by every major department in the country. With her genetics and family background, how can you even compare her to Alara? Seeing the discontent on the team's faces, the captain relented, but only slightly. "Ilara can serve as Serafina's assistant and support her work." I rolled my eyes internally, but remained outwardly still. I had long ago mastered the art of playing deaf when I was around people I disliked. After all, who could possibly force a mute girl to kiss up to them? After the meeting, Serafina bounced over to me, her smile wide and bright. "You must be Alara. The captain assigned me to partner with Deputy Chief Riley. I honestly didn't know you were his partner before. We've known each other for years, so if anything were going to happen, it would have happened by now. You don't have to worry." It took me less than a second to see through her saccharine act. I kept my head down, pretending I hadn't heard a word she said. To my surprise, she threw a casual arm around my shoulders. "Ilara, we're having a guys' night out, so no girls allowed. Hope you don't mind. I'm just a really straightforward person." I was momentarily speechless. It was such a clumsy, low-level attempt to exclude me. I noticed the other team members' eyes darting between us, a mixture of curiosity and discomfort on their faces. I picked up a notepad and scribbled a message, handing it to her. "Are you a man?" I heard a teammate nearby let out a snort of laughter. Serafina's face flushed a deep beet red with anger. She quickly regained her composure and grabbed my hand again, her grip surprisingly tight. "Ilara, it's all my fault. I came in and stole your position. I'll go tell the captain to give the ME job back to you right now." I yanked my hand away from hers and turned my back, saying nothing. Serafina stood there, confused by my reaction. A teammate took pity on her and explained, "Ilara has a bad reaction when she touches men. She must have mistaken you for one." Serafina's face shifted from red to a pale green as she held her breath in frustration. "Ilara, I'm a girl. The guys here just don't treat me like one. And besides, I don't really like hanging out with girls." A light bulb went off in my head. I handed her another note. "Why don't you and the deputy have a pissing contest?" I could hear our teammates trying and failing to stifle their laughter. Serafina's face turned from green to a blotchy shade of purple. Captain Davies treated Serafina like a precious, delicate treasure. On her first official assignment, the girl with the renowned ME father and supposed deep family learning took one look at a bloated, disfigured human fragment and immediately began vomiting uncontrollably. Deputy Chief Marcus Riley ended up having to practically carry her away from the scene. The captain rushed to her defense. "Serafina's just new here," he explained to anyone who would listen. "She's not used to it." He even comforted her directly. "If you're feeling really sick, you don't have to come to work for a while." Then, he turned and barked an order at me. "Finish the autopsy report and give it to Serafina. I'm sure her analysis will be more professional than yours." I feigned incomprehension and went with the other team members to retrieve the rest of the remains. Ever since Serafina's arrival, Captain Davies had transformed into a complete sycophant. Everything began and ended with Serafina. Even the simple act of pouring a glass of water earned her a stream of flowery compliments. I suspected that if we weren't at a crime scene, he would have praised how beautifully pixelated her vomit was. Naturally, the primary credit for the case report went to Serafina. The team members weren't children. Nobody was happy about having their hard-earned credit so blatantly stolen. But under the captain's authority, all they could do was gossip in private. I sat nearby, pretending to read a file, but my ears were tuned to their conversation. "He's acting like the great Dr. Finch is going to get him a promotion tomorrow. I half expect him to make Serafina the captain." I saw the captain take Serafina to a hotel. He even gave her flowers. I heard Serafina blushing, calling the captain Dad. Clack. The pen slipped from my fingers and fell to the floor. Captain Davies was in his early 30s. There was no conceivable way he had a daughter in her 20s. This was a whole new level of workplace drama. Serafina was shielded from all actual work by the captain. Since I wasn't a permanent employee, my signature on most reports simply became another credit added to her growing resume. Captain Davies continued to block my promotion, repeatedly citing my mutism as the reason. "A medical examiner needs to collaborate with the team," he would say. "Serafina does that very well." In stark contrast, he lavishly praised Serafina's eventual promotion to the official ME position. Everyone was an adult, just trying to make a living under the captain's thumb. Serafina's promotion passed with just over half the votes, a meager 2-vote majority. Even though it passed, the captain was clearly unhappy with the lack of overwhelming support. He slammed a file in his hand onto the table. "Some people just can't recognize talent. They can't stand to see others succeed, so they form their little cliques and push out the truly useful people." I knew he was talking about me, but I just put on an innocent expression. What could I, a mute girl with no vote, possibly have done? Next, the captain called for a vote to dismiss me entirely. I scoffed silently. He was really going to great lengths just to get rid of a temp like me. Deputy Chief Riley was the first to object. "Ilara has been with this team for years. If not for her contributions, then for her hard work alone, she deserves to be here. She has extensive experience, and I don't think her inability to speak affects our communication in the slightest." He had spoken what was on everyone's mind. Autopsies involve a great deal of technical jargon, and the ME needs to translate it into terms the rest of the team can understand. Not everyone on the team had a college degree. Serafina's reports were long-winded, overly academic, and convoluted. During the time she was partnered with Marcus, he had argued with her about it several times. Serafina always just laughed it off, mocking his lower level of education. It always ended with Marcus coming to me for a new, clearer report. My unconventional, straightforward approach just happened to suit the team perfectly. In the end, the precinct wasn't the captain's personal dictatorship. Although Marcus wasn't the chief, he had a very powerful father. The motion to fire me ended with 0 votes in favor. As I left the conference room, I saw Serafina's furious expression and had an idea. I passed her a note. "My deputy and I just work well together because we've known each other for a long time. You shouldn't mind." Feeling like something was missing, I added another line. "If anything were going to happen between us, it would have by now." Serafina's face went through a whole spectrum of colors, from green to a deep, blotchy purple. Despite the private grumbling, Serafina officially became the team's medical examiner. The very first thing she did after taking the position was to target me. Alara, this family member has been consistently filing complaints about errors in your autopsy. Explain yourself. I passed her a note. My report is correct. Not correct. Serafina slammed her hand on the table. Are you saying you did nothing wrong and the family member is just making baseless complaints? I was speechless. The complainant was the deceased son. The moment I had examined the body, I knew the victim had been beaten to death and then thrown from a building to stage a suicide. The investigation strongly suggested the killer was the complainant's father. This kind of situation wasn't uncommon. The father killed the mother, but having a father in prison would be a lifelong stain on the son. So this 17-year-old boy was trying to prove the autopsy was wrong through repeated complaints. This became the perfect opportunity for Serafina to try and control me. She put on a cloying, "This is for your own good" expression. Go and placate this complainant. Communication is a required course for a medical examiner. I pretended not to understand. After all, forcing someone with mutism to communicate is asking the impossible. Complaints at the department were usually handled by a dedicated team. It wasn't something for the operational units to deal with. The matter should have ended there. But Serafina, in her new position, was eager to make her mark and insisted I go and apologize to the complainant. I refused, but it was no use. She slung her arm around me like we were the best of friends. Alara, you're always cooped up in the office and don't understand how the world works. But when you're out here working, you have to be flexible, not so rigid. My hands flew in a blur of sign language as I vehemently protested her actions. A medical examiner's job is to speak for the dead. If even the ME falsifies reports, who will be left to convey the words of the deceased? His mother is already gone. We can't send his father to prison too. You have to think about the living, Serafina argued, pushing me into the room. I stumbled a few steps forward, and when I looked up at the person in front of me, I froze. Despite the constant complaints, I had never met the complainant before. His face, his eyes, they matched a person locked away in a deep recess of my memory. I quickly checked the file in my hand. Throughout my career, the bodies had always been just a series of case numbers. Who they were, where they came from, I never paid attention. I found the deceased's information. Case 3251. Although she'd had plastic surgery, I recognized her instantly from the distinct contours of her brow bone. Once, she had held me gently and sung lullabies to me. Once, she had slapped my face over and over, cursing me for not being good enough. And once, after the divorce, she had abandoned her 3-year-old daughter on the street. To be honest, I don't remember the actual experience of dissecting my own mother. There was no psychic connection, no sudden premonition of dread. She was just like any other victim, a bloody, mangled face, her body covered in bruises under torn clothes. Over the years, I never blamed my father or my mother. Because of the defective genes I carried, I truly was a freak. The only thing that surprised me was that we would meet again in such a dishonorable way. My mother was like a fish stranded on the shore, desperately flopping into a bucket she thought was salvation, only to find it was just another kind of hell. Serafina was explaining things to the boy, all the while pinching my arm hard. I dodged her grasp and spoke, the words feeling foreign and rusty in my throat. The autopsy report is correct. You need to face the truth about your father instead of hoping to change the outcome. A rotten root can't be fixed. Shut up! Serafina shrieked. She pulled the agitated boy aside, attempting to calm him down. My half-brother here must have had some real clout. Serafina was completely preoccupied, forgetting all about trying to mess with me. She was bowing and scraping before the boy, promising she would give him a satisfactory result. I watched coldly, determined not to compromise my professional integrity for anything. Let this be the one and only thing I could do for her, for the defective genes she gave me.
Serafina saw the boy out and returned, exhausted. Only then did it seem to hit her. Did you just speak? I looked down, pretending to be busy with my files. I never said that having mutism meant I was physically incapable of speaking. Serafina seemed to think she was hallucinating. She ran around telling everyone she saw that she dreamed I had spoken. Everyone just gave her strange looks. She didn't notice, lost in her own little world of astonishment. Finally, Deputy Chief Riley couldn't take it anymore and told her the truth. Everyone on the team knew I could talk. I just rarely did, and they were used to it. Faced with Serafina's stunned expression, Marcus added, "The only time Ilara speaks is when she's so emotional she can't control it anymore." The translation was clear. If you push a quiet person too far, even a mute will be provoked into speaking. Serafina finally realized what a massive fool she had made of herself. She left with a dark look on her face, shooting me a glare as she went. At the next vote on my promotion, Captain Davies was out of tricks and could only watch as my application passed unanimously. After the meeting, he called me into his office alone. His main points were that since I was newly promoted, I needed to watch my words and actions, remember my duties, and always prioritize Serafina's opinions. Serafina's father was coming to visit the department soon, so I had better keep my head down. And finally, even if I could speak, my mutism made me unsuitable for the ME role, and he could arrange a more appropriate, less public-facing position for me. Having dealt with my mother's death, I felt a bit more mature and worldly. After listening to his lecture, I handed him a note. "Do I have to call you Dad, too?" Even though I had infuriated both Serafina and the captain, my mother's autopsy report was still officially concluded as a suicide. Today, Dr. Alistair Finch, the renowned medical examiner the captain always bragged about, was visiting the department to inspect and guide our work. The great ME fit the stereotype perfectly, a serious, middle-aged man who rarely smiled. Though dressed plainly, his chin was slightly raised, as if years of success had given him a natural air of arrogance. Even the usually bold Serafina tiptoed around him, afraid of doing anything to displease him. The captain stood by, lavishing praise on Serafina, calling her a natural-born ME. We, the background extras, followed behind, listening to Marcus's running commentary. My dad told me this guy is a firm believer in innate talent. He loves geniuses and has been looking for that young genius ME who helped the higher-ups crack several major cases a few years ago. But they keep telling him the kid is still in school. "I've heard of that genius ME too," a young officer next to me joined the gossip. "They say his eyes are sharper than a hawk's, his nose more sensitive than a dog's. Even if a body has turned to liquid, he can find the true cause of death. Everyone calls him the corpse whisperer. He was just a kid back then. I can't imagine how terrifyingly good he must be by now. He's probably protected, studying at some famous university. A person like that would have a sealed file for sure. Ilara, your mother's here. She's waiting for you at the front desk." Hearing this, I looked up and quietly slipped out of the group, heading straight for the entrance. "Mom," I called out to my adoptive mother. "Ilara." Maria's face was kind. "I heard you got your promotion, so I made some dumplings to celebrate." I brought my mom into the reception area and opened the container. Her cooking skills were average, and a few of the dumplings had broken skins, but I ate them with relish. My mom said, "I heard at the front desk just now that some great medical examiner is here looking for a genius." "Me, Ilara. He's not looking for you, is he?" I paused my chopsticks, puzzled, then shook my head. The great M.E. quote, "S. daughter works here at the precinct." My mom sighed. "I know you have a gift. It's all my fault for holding you back. If you had stayed at the state level back then." I shook my head. "You're a great mom. I love you, Mom. I want to be your child forever." My mom's eyes reddened as she stroked my head. "Good girl. Ilara Vance." I looked up to see someone calling my name from the doorway. It was the great ME, Alistair Finch. Seeing a visitor, my mom quickly packed up her things to leave, telling me to be on my best behavior. "Your name is Ilara Vance, correct?" Alistair sat down across from me. I didn't speak, wondering what he was up to. I'm Alistair Finch. I want to take you on as my student. I fiddled with my fingers, staying silent. Anyone could see I had mutism. I couldn't be a medical examiner. Alistair didn't seem surprised. He continued, Mutism. It's true that it's not suitable for an ME, but you are a natural-born talent for this work. I've seen the autopsy reports you've written. They are concise, direct, and get straight to the point. Compared to you, Serafina is still very green. His tone was gentle. Everyone thinks your mutism is why you haven't been made permanent all these years, but you can actually speak. So, the real reason a genius like you has been working as a temp for 5 years must be something else. I finally looked up and met his gaze. Alistair looked out the window. You and your mother have a very good relationship. Outside, my adoptive mom, who I thought had already left, was standing at the department entrance, craning her neck to look in my direction, her face etched with worry. I looked away. The reason I hadn't been promoted was that I had killed someone. It was a very ordinary incident. My adoptive mother was a corpse carrier at the crematorium. Every day she transported countless bodies. At that time, a wealthy man had died of illness, and his family brought him to be cremated as usual. The paperwork was in order, and the family was present. But shortly after the cremation, a woman appeared with 2 children, claiming they were the rich man's kids. The 3 of them were the mistress and illegitimate children he had kept on the side. Anyone familiar with such family dynamics knows the score. Once the body is reduced to ashes, DNA testing is impossible, and they couldn't inherit any of the tycoon's fortune. The rich man's ashes had already been taken by his family. The woman was helpless. She couldn't win against the legal wife. So she claimed that my mom hadn't waited for all family members to be present before starting the cremation, that the procedure was improper, and she threatened to complain to the management. The crematorium staff tried to calm the woman down while maintaining order, but they overlooked the 2 twin boys she had brought with her. These boys were clearly used to causing trouble together. They quietly slipped past the safety line. One of them rammed his head hard into my mom's stomach. As my mom staggered, the other one pushed her toward the active cremation furnace. The furnaces back then weren't the fully automated, enclosed systems of today. They had these small openings so the technician could occasionally turn the body. The temperature inside was over 200 degrees Celsius. If my mom had touched it, she would have been severely burned, if not killed. I slammed into my mom from the side. The force of the impact not only knocked her out of the way, but also sent the little boy, who pushed her, careening into the long shovel the technician used to turn the bodies. The searing heat from the shovel made the boy jump back instantly. He reflexively stumbled backward, right toward the burning furnace. The opening was only large enough for an adult's arm, but the child fell in up to his waist. Although he was pulled out quickly, it was still a cremation furnace. After 10 days in the ICU, the little boy took his last breath. The woman, having lost both her meal ticket and her child, went insane. There was security footage and eyewitnesses. The boy's death was a tragic accident. But someone had died, and the family's emotions had to be managed. Around that time, I had discovered that the cause of death for a body sent from the state capital was suspicious. My superiors took me to the capital to present a report. During my time there, I stayed in the morgue, watching the medical examiner's work. The state officials had heard about the incident at the crematorium and minimized the fallout. Partly because I was a minor, and partly because it was ruled as excessive self-defense, I was ultimately sent to a juvenile detention center and was only released shortly before I turned 18. Because of this incident, I was barred from any official position in law enforcement or the justice system. All these years, my adoptive mom felt that she had ruined my future. I never thought it was her fault. They were the ones bullying my mom. We were just defending ourselves. What did we do wrong? I thought for a moment, then finally passed him a note. Do you know who I am? Alistair paused when he saw the note. "I'm very sorry," he said. "The moment I heard mutism, I immediately thought of you. It was just too much of a coincidence. I remember when you were just a toddler, you could already tell the difference between human and animal bones by instinct. I was so amazed back then. I, Alistair Finch, had fathered a genius medical examiner. The rest didn't need to be said. But what a pity, I was diagnosed with mutism. You really are my child. You carry my blood, the genius genes that can defy convention." Alistair's tone was ecstatic. "Child, come with me to the capital. You can have a better education, better guidance. I'm your father, I won't harm you. I will cultivate you with everything I have, and you will become an even greater medical examiner than I am." I believed his words, but I refused. "How will you explain this to your current wife and child?" Serafina was my age, which said everything about Alistair's affair. I didn't ask if he knew what happened to my mother, because to him, a daughter really did seem to be just a tool for reproduction. "Dad," Serafina's voice came from the doorway. I turned to see her eyes filled with a mixture of terror and resentment. "Serafina," the captain followed behind her. At the same time, I saw the astonishment in the captain's eyes. I glanced to the side and saw the reflection of Alistair and me in the glass window. Our profiles were nearly identical. The captain's attitude toward me improved almost overnight. He never asked me to do Serafina's work again. He stopped making snide remarks about me forming cliques. In today's meeting, he even praised me for how quickly and efficiently I produced my reports. Marcus's jaw dropped. "What kind of spell did you cast on the captain to make him bow down to you like that?" he joked. "I bet if you asked to be the lead ME today, he'd kick the great Dr. Finch to the curb without a second thought." The term medical examiner must have triggered Serafina. She slammed the file in her hands onto the table. I was standing right between her and the table. The sharp corner of the file grazed my cheek as it flew past, only to be knocked down by Marcus. "Serafina, are you crazy? You take it out on people just because you can't write a report." Serafina's eyes were bloodshot. She stared daggers at me, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Well, I'm not like some people who have a good mom who's so good at seducing other people's fathers, so shameless. So, she thought my mom and I were the mistress and the illegitimate child." Marcus looked completely baffled. "What is wrong with you? You're acting crazy all the time." "What are you all talking about?" A few people were standing at the door, including the captain and Alistair Finch. Among them, I also saw my half-brother, Leo. He stood behind a man in a well-tailored suit, his expression grim. "Elara, I'd like you to meet someone. This is Mr. Sterling, the chairman of the Sterling Corporation. He's provided a lot of funding for our justice programs." Before I could react, the boy behind the man spoke up. "Mr. Finch, I don't think my father needs to meet an incompetent temp like her." "Leo, what's going on?" the chairman asked. My half-brother pointed at me. "It was this temp. When she did the autopsy on my mom, she insisted that my dad killed her. Everyone knows my dad loved my mom more than life itself. How could he possibly kill his own wife?" The boy was full of righteous indignation, as if he were speaking the absolute truth. Thankfully, Miss Serafina Thorne had a sharp eye and corrected this mistake in time. Otherwise, my father would have suffered a greater injustice than any in history. The Sterling Corporation chairman's face clouded over. His sharp, hawk-like eyes stared at me menacingly. "Since it was a misunderstanding that's been resolved, that's good. I trust the law will grant me justice." "Ah, yes, yes," the captain chimed in hastily. "That's right, Elara is still young. It's understandable she'd make mistakes on something as complex as an autopsy. Luckily, we had Serafina, Mr. Finch's own daughter, to personally handle the case and clarify the facts for Chairman Sterling. It truly is a case of family genius passed down through the generations. Indeed, I imagine the corpse whisperer, who was all the rage a couple of years ago, must be another name for your talented daughter, the chairman said, smiling at Alistair. Alistair was an old fox. He understood the situation immediately from Leo's few sentences. I stared at Alistair, trying to read his expression. I wanted to know if the genius he so desperately craved could hold her own against the power of capital. Alistair hesitated for only a moment before speaking. Serafina is still just a child. She can't bear such a prestigious title. This was as good as confirming that Serafina's report was correct. A weight lifted from my chest. I hadn't misjudged him. Alistair Finch was indeed a hypocrite. Chairman Sterling's smile relaxed, seeming more genuine. Mr. Finch, you're too modest. With a talent like your daughter, how could you ever worry about a successor? Serafina walked out of the precinct with the group, laughing and smiling. I stood where I was and started packing my things. Marcus was surprised. What are you doing? It's only Tuesday. Are you going home? I sighed. A nearby officer sighed too. You saw how arrogant that young master of the Sterling family was. He's clearly targeting Ilara, and Mr. Finch is siding with him. I'm afraid Ilara's in for a tough time. Marcus's eyes widened. Bullying Ilara? Not on my watch. I'm going to call someone. I grabbed Marcus's arm and shook my head vigorously. This time, Alistair himself was probably behind it. Even if Marcus had connections, he wouldn't easily offend Alistair for a minor employee like me. I pointed to myself and made an okay sign. I had a plan. Marcus calmed down and started helping me pack, muttering insults about everyone who had just left. Just as I was about done, Alistair and his group returned. Alistair personally delivered the notice to me. Your work has shown a major lapse in judgment. Fortunately, it was rectified in time. You are hereby dismissed and are barred from ever working in the forensic field again. I knew it was a threat from Alistair, but I wasn't buying it. I took the termination letter, grabbed my box of belongings, and walked out. Serafina, beaming with smug satisfaction, walked up to me. Ilara, I've always told you, you can't always be on top. Life has its ups and downs, and you never know when your family might get dragged into it. A jolt of fear went through me. What did you do to my mom? I lunged forward and grabbed her by the collar. Serafina's physical fitness was no match for someone like me who'd grown up hauling bodies at a crematorium. She stumbled back, nearly falling, and coughed for a good while. So you finally speak. I was starting to think, cough, cough, you'd be calm and detached forever. A few officers quickly pulled us apart. Ilara, Serafina's probably just trying to scare you. You should go home and check first. I gave Serafina one last cold look, then turned and left without a word. If anything had happened to my mom, I would make Serafina pay. When I rushed home, my mom was surrounded by several burly men. The furniture was in disarray. Clearly, there had been a struggle. Mom! I stepped in front of her. Tell Serafina that if she has a problem, she can come to me. I reached into my pocket and came out with 3 sharp surgical scalpels in my hand. I usually cut up corpses on a dissection table, but I don't mind doing it at home. The large men were expressionless. Our madam would like to invite your mother for a visit. The rich man's mistress. No, I suddenly remembered. It had to be Alistair's wife. Years ago, at the state capitol, the medical examiner I worked with was Alistair's junior from school. The two had never gotten along. Later, Alistair married his mentor's twice-divorced daughter, and his career took off. His junior had backed the wrong horse and ended up as a professor at his old university, slowly climbing the ladder over the years. From what I remembered, Alistair's second wife, Serafina's mother, was a formidable woman. It was because of her that Alistair, a student from a humble background, had achieved his current status, becoming an idol for many aspiring medical examiners. Serafina had mistaken me and my mom for Alistair's mistress and illegitimate child. So Alistair's wife sent people to teach us a lesson. But Alistair's wife wasn't a simple-minded person. Would she really act so rashly based on a few words from Serafina? Police! Hands up, all of you! A sharp command broke the standoff. Seeing Marcus and his team, the bodyguards all put their hands on their heads and squatted down. Alara, are you okay? Marcus strode forward. You ran off so fast. If it weren't for me, you would have been too late. I shook my head, indicating I was fine. I have a letter. I need you to take it to the state capitol. Daughter of renowned Emmy Alistair Finch, Serafina Thorne, falsifies evidence to acquit Stirling Corp chairman. The media was the first to react. It started when someone posted photos from the day of the Stirling Corp chairman's wife's death. The post pointed out numerous injuries on her body that were inconsistent with suicide and looked more like the result of domestic abuse. Then, someone consulted forensic science students who provided a pathological analysis from various angles. Just a day before, Stirling Corp had released an official obituary for the chairman's wife on their website, which included the official M.E. quote, S report and case closed certificate. The signature on the autopsy report was clearly Serafina Thorne's. The stark contradiction sparked a heated debate. People compared Serafina's report with the analysis from the professionals. Some forensic students even put the photos and the report side by side for a detailed breakdown. The conclusion was damning. Although Serafina's report was filled with professional jargon, it was completely at odds with the evidence in the photos.
The news caused an instant uproar. The public's attention turned to Alistair Finch, Serafina's father. The reasoning was that Serafina was too inexperienced to have the nerve to falsify a report on her own, nor would she have the connections to a corporate giant like Stirling Corp. That left only one possibility. Alistair had ordered it. For years, Alistair had cultivated the image of a great scholar hungry for talent. Students from all over the country dreamed of studying under him. But who says scholars don't love money? I can't believe a scandal like this has hit the great Dr. Finch. He'd better clear this up fast. This means one of two things. Either Serafina is completely incompetent, or Alistair Finch is in deep. Get this trash out of academia. I watched the flood of comments on the screen and smirked. Alistair, are you going to save your daughter, or are you going to save yourself? Alistair, true to form, was an old fox. Even caught in such a major scandal, he was the first to issue a clarification. First, the viral photos of the Stirling Corp chairman's wife were AI-generated fakes. Second, the autopsy report was prepared by an intern and the signature was forged. Third, everyone should have faith in justice. But then, Serafina's old-school transcripts suddenly appeared online, and the grades were atrocious. You could even see Serafina's handwriting on some of the exam papers, and it was a perfect match for the handwriting on the autopsy report. The internet exploded again. Don't even need to compare. It's identical. Alistair Finch spoke up for his daughter too soon. I remember Alistair Finch and his wife were both top students. I guess the apple fell far from the tree and rolled into a ditch. I don't know about ditches, but you're a real savage for that comment, lol. My 0-second calculation predicts Dr. Finch's next statement will be about how Serafina has a long-term intern who follows her everywhere. Serafina became public enemy number one, with the entire internet demanding an official response. Either Alistair had ordered Serafina to do it, or Serafina had done it herself. Alistair's choice was swift and decisive. He abandoned Serafina. The captain quickly suspended her, stating that a new team would be assigned to re-examine the body of the Stirling Corp chairman's wife. Stirling Corp, however, was getting antsy. A video surfaced of the chairman's young son, Leo, causing a scene at the precinct. Because it contained sensitive information, it was quickly deleted, but not before many people saw it and started discussing it. As a mother, this is heartbreaking. The son only cares about his rich dad, not his suffering mom. I could never tolerate a child I gave birth to looking down on me. I remember Stirling Corp donated a lot of medical equipment to Alistair Finch's lab. Just think, if this is all true, it's terrifying. A human life can actually be bought and sold. Before the precinct could even figure out a plan, an order came down from above. A special investigator would be sent to conduct a new autopsy on the Stirling Corp chairman's wife. If you want to hit your opponent where it hurts, you hand the weapon to their mortal enemy. Alistair Finch's old-school rival was the perfect choice. I had Marcus deliver the evidence of Seraphina's and Alistair's falsified reports to this rival, sending it under the name the Corpse Whisperer. With proper handling and the weight of that name, the case was bound to be reopened. Alistair pinned all the blame on Seraphina, claiming he knew nothing about it. He said Seraphina had privately accepted a bribe from the Stirling Corp chairman and falsified the report. If Seraphina were to plead guilty, she would be facing prison time. The next afternoon, I saw a sharp, professionally dressed woman arrive in a hurry. She was extremely alert. Sensing my gaze, she immediately turned to look at me. That one look sent me back to a childhood memory. It was a dark, gloomy day. My mother was holding me, hiding in a closet. Outside the closet, my father, who was always so prim and proper, was naked and writhing beneath a woman. Strange sounds came from their bodies. When they were finished, the woman turned her head and, through the slats of the closet door, looked directly at me. "Don't speak," my mother whispered from behind. Her hand clamped tightly over my mouth, stopping me from making a sound. "Shh, you can't speak." "What's this about not speaking?" Marcus was standing behind me. "That's Dr. Finch's wife. She actually came in person. Seraphina was a difficult birth for her at an older age. There's no way she's going to let her go to prison. They'll probably find a scapegoat for this, send Seraphina away for a few years, and then bring her back." "What about Stirling?" I asked. "Stirling. The Stirling chairman was arrested on his way to the airport. Probably out of pure rage, he spilled a lot of details about his private dealings with Alistair. It opened a can of worms. Even your half-brother was brought in for round after round of questioning. The truth about my mother's death came out, and the internet celebrated. I held my mother's urn and handed it to Leo. He suddenly asked, 'Did you know my mom?' I froze, then shook my head. 'I only met her a few times, but that stubborn streak you have, that refusal to give up. It's just like my mom,' he murmured. 'Dad beat her so many times, but she still refused to leave.' I laughed. Isn't that just defective genes? After multiple investigations, Alistair Finch was ultimately arrested and imprisoned on several charges, including dereliction of duty and abuse of power for personal gain. The Stirling chairman was arrested and imprisoned for charges including intentional homicide and bribery. Everyone involved, including the captain, was brought down. Because Seraphina was not the mastermind, and with her mother pulling strings, she only received a suspended sentence. By the time I heard this news, I had already moved with my adoptive mother to the state capital. Alistair's old rival had been promoted again because of this case and was now the head of the department. He had a permanent position waiting for me, effective immediately. "Alara, wait!" I turned to see Marcus. "You're the captain now. Where are you going?" He was carrying a bunch of bags. "We're the most perfectly matched partners. How could you go somewhere without me? I haven't seen you write anything lately. Is your mutism cured?" "Yes,